So, we know many sub-postmasters who were wrongly accused of theft and fraud are still fighting for compensation, despite the scandal now being recognised as one of the biggest miscarriages of justice in UK history.
Now, the cases taking the longest to solve involve the victims who were forced to declare bankruptcy in order to pay back their losses. Our business correspondent, Emma Simpson, has been looking into this.
Tony Downey is finally heading back to his old home in the Lake District. It's taken him 15 years to have the courage to return. Tony fled abroad when the post office ruined him.
We lost everything. We lost our business, we lost our home, I lost my health. We just up and ran. We didn't even say goodbye. We were too embarrassed. We just ran. Thank you.
Tony bought the Hawkshead post office in 2001. He said it was buzzing and a dream come true. It's a childcare centre now. What's it like to be back?
Overwhelming, to be honest. A lot of emotions after 15 years of not coming back here.
Here it is, your old business.
Gosh, very bleak. A bit angry that, you know, this should have been ours, our business. And now I live in Spain in a rented apartment with no career, no, you know, no money, no pension, no nothing.
Tony had £35,000 of shortfalls at his branch. He and his wife used their savings and credit cards to balance the books. When another 7,000 of losses appeared, they couldn't pay any more. Tony resigned and sold up, advised to go bankrupt 2 months later.
My health started to decline. I got headaches, stress, anxiety, social anxiety, and it got a lot worse than that. I didn't realise how bad it was until we got the medical records. You know, I was suicidal.
Tony, hi! He's still nervous about who he might meet here, but not Diane.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Sorry, it's such a bad thing to have to do.
She bought the post office from him, and guess what? She had shortfalls too.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it?
Horrible,
How about
honestly.
you? Back to the post
Well,
office?
I swore I'd never step foot in Hawkshead again.
Yeah.
It was Tony who encouraged her to claim for compensation.
I've been on antidepressants ever since all this ever started. We had several audits. Each time they were demanding money. The last one that we had said, right, you either pay £1,200 now or you're going to be prosecuted. Yeah. And you think, oh crikey, you know, I'm going to be let out of here in handcuffs. This is awful.
Well, we had £3,000 and they literally made my wife go to the bank and she went up to my friends there to borrow money and we had to pay it by 4:30. I thought it was me, you thought it was you.
I thought it was me.
And it wasn't. It was a computer
and the
system.
same post office.
Same post office.
Exactly, same post office,
Yeah,
yep.
same problems.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. The post office has accepted that Horizon was to blame for Tony's losses at his branch, but they won't admit causing his bankruptcy. So far, he's ended up with just £10,000 worth of damages, far less than he's owed. The rest of the £140,000 worth of compensation has gone straight to the official receiver to pay off his bankruptcy debts.
It's an insult. At the moment, they're not even close to putting me back to where I would have been. But they have to admit the causation before they'll do that. You know, in my opinion, is that a reason why they're not? Because then it opens the floodgates to, you know, a proper claim.
In a statement, the Post Office said it doesn't comment on individual cases, but we fully recognise that recompensing victims who've been declared bankrupt or insolvent as a result of Horizon shortfalls has been a complicated and lengthy process, for which we apologise. All offers are assessed by an independent panel, and any individual in receipt of an offer is entitled to dispute the amount and seek legal advice, paid for by the Post Office. Tony's doing that. His legal team are dealing with most of the bankruptcy cases.
The enemy is time. The fear and worry we have is that people are left in a situation where they've got to throw the towel in because time is running out and they want some sort of resolution and some sort of access to money. But the risk there is that they don't get the right level of compensation.
He believes Tony's got a very strong case. Just how long will it take to unravel? But at least Tony's still young enough to keep fighting. Emma Simpson, BBC News, Hawkshead.
So let's pick up on some of the themes you heard there. Nick Wallace is with us this morning, who's written the book, The Great Post Office Scandal. It's followed this right from the beginning, Nick. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Alongside him, former sub-post-mistress Wendy Buffrey.
Morning.
Very good morning to you, Wendy. Do you want, just so people understand, I always think it's worth it, can you explain a kind of a pre-seed version of what happened to you?
Yeah, I took on the post office in 98 and was fine until 2008. I'd had a couple of losses, but nothing huge other than one £8,000 one. And then I had a huge amount of stamps appear on my computer screen. And I did everything I was supposed to do to remove those, and it doubled the loss from 9,000 to 18.
When you say stamps, are they like alerts that...
No, actual physical books of 100 stamps.
Oh.
700 appeared on my screen from nowhere. And I hadn't got them in the post office. They hadn't been delivered, and I hadn't got them. And then when I tried to take them out again, it went up to £36,000. And that's when I thought, well, I just haven't got that many. I don't know what to do. And I rolled over without saying anything, as if I had that many.
Sorry, do you want to explain that phrase a little more? When you
rolled
say...
over when I did my when I did my end of month balance, it said I was £36,000 short. I didn't have that many. I knew that the post office would want that money, so I did the wrong thing, and I actually said I'd got it, and that was the beginning of the end for me. But I've since found out that had I actually told them that it had gone, I would still be in the same position as I am today.
Yeah, Wendy, I find it interesting you say you did the wrong thing, because what we know now is you were not in the wrong. That you know...
She had a ghost discrepancy suddenly appear out of nowhere, and then she was held liable for £36,000. It's insane.
Yes. And
it's one of the most cut-and-dried cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And the consequence of that, in terms of the...
I had just over 18 months to wait without hearing anything, nothing at all. And then I got a letter through the post, along with my husband, special delivery letter that had a proceeds of crime order in there. So they froze everything that we'd got. We couldn't do anything. And then I ended, 4 or 5 weeks after that, I had a summons to court, and I ended up with 150 hours community service and a fine, and my life being turned upside down.
How is your life now?
It's better than it was, but nothing, compensation, heartfelt thanks, which they've never ever managed, or apologies if they've never managed. It just, you can't stop what they've done to you. It still makes me ill. It still is there every minute of the day.
This devastation, Nick, that we've heard from you, Wendy, we've heard from so many sub-postmasters, this won't leave.
No.
This is, indelibly marked. You heard about this first when you were presenting a breakfast show for the BBC.
Yeah.
And I think there was one conversation you had, and then it just ramped up, and that kind of not piqued your interest, but made you more determined to look into this, which has been going on for years. What, 13 years you've been looking into this?
I first spoke to Devinder Misra at the time that his wife, Seema Misra, was in prison. She'd just been sentenced, and he said she was put in prison for a crime she didn't commit.
We've spoken to her on this programme.
And BBC Breakfast has been brilliant in following this story for so long and supporting the sub-postmasters, and it's just been this extraordinary journey over so many years. I mean, Alan Bates was fighting his ejection from the post office in 2003, and it took 16 years before anyone in authority, a High Court judge, finally turned around and said, this is a serious issue. Wendy got her conviction quashed in 2021, 3 years ago. She's still waiting for her full and final compensation to actually land. And I remember at the time when Wendy was interviewed, just as she was coming out of the courtroom, a bit emotional in floods of tears. And the one thing that she said is that it's the time. You can't get the time back. Doesn't matter how much money you get, doesn't matter the fact you've got your name cleared. Lives have been ruined, and there's no way back from that. And so that's the most extraordinary thing about this scandal, the period of years that it took, and the fact the government, which owns the Post Office, fought for so long to deny these sub-postmasters justice that makes it such a big scandal.
Wendy, we have, on a couple of occasions, had the privilege of talking to people like yourself who've been at the heart of this.
Yeah.
And a couple of thoughts have always occurred to me is, and as you explained just a moment ago, when you started to explain the mechanics of what happened, you can do that clearly and you can go through it. And then the other part of it is the emotional damage. And that is clearly, even sitting with you now, I can tell how hard that is, A, to explain, but just still maybe to say out loud. And hopefully now, because of the work that journalists like Nick have done, you feel bolder and you know, emboldened to be honest about those things, to say what it's felt like.
It's the fear, it's the not sleeping, it's... You just cannot explain to somebody that has not been through it how it feels. You know, and it's not just me, you know, everybody's family goes through it as well. You know, my close family have been so supportive, but you always feel as though you've let them down, even though you haven't done anything, because you've altered their lives. You know, it's because I made the decision with my husband to buy a post office, it altered our lives. Instead of being something that could take us through to retirement and be something, oh, I loved doing the job, you know, I really loved it. And it's gone. It's you know, it's just not there. And when you're found guilty of doing something that you didn't do, it completely, something inside you dies and it never comes back.
And what I think is remarkable, because Nick, you're now embarking on this tour next month.
Yes.
To tell the story. And we were chatting before, and Wendy, didn't you say, look, if someone doesn't turn up, I'll be your backup? Because you are willing to talk about this story and make sure people hear it, because it's more than the television programme.
It is.
Wendy's a compelling talker. She really is. And I've sat in a room before where she's told her story to an audience who were just hanging off her every word. And I want to be able to go out on stage and give context to this scandal, because, of course, the drama can't cover everything. And talk about the facets and also bring people up to date, because I'll be on tour whilst the public inquiry restarts. But it's hearing from someone like Wendy who can just say, this happened to me, and this is why it's important, that really affects audiences. And I've been lucky enough, because this scandal happened to so many people, everywhere I go around the country, I've been able to find a sub-postmaster who's willing, who's local to the area, who will come up on stage and talk about their experience. But Wendy, bless her, she said, look, if you don't fill any gaps in the schedule, I'll be there. And I'm very grateful to Wendy.
How have you found the public inquiry? Because obviously, you know, news organisations have been covering it, and we've seen various people give evidence from both sides.
I've seen lots of people be very, very forgetful. I just don't understand how people can come and give evidence and stand there and say, I don't know, I can't remember, I can't recall, I don't know. Especially when it's something that affects the fact that they might be brought before a court. Everything else, all of a sudden, they can remember straight away. And I find that difficult if they've gone in there and said, I'm going to tell the truth, and then not say anything because it might get them into trouble. I wish the inquiry had more teeth. I wish it could actually compel people to tell the truth rather than just say, oh, I don't remember.
Do you still, Wendy, have a sense? I noticed, and Nick, I know you've spoken to Wendy many times before. As I'm listening to Wendy, I'm thinking, it's quite often I feel like I've heard you blame yourself. Even now, even given what we know, you're blaming yourself a moment ago for embarking on on buying a post office or running a post office in the first place. Yeah. That feels like a burden on top of a burden. You're still questioning decisions you made for which there is no blame attached.
No, I know. It's mad, isn't it? When something like this happens to you, it just changes your outlook on everything. It really does, you know, and you just think, well, if I hadn't bought the post office, this wouldn't have happened. If I hadn't bought the post office, that wouldn't have happened. And it's just ongoing.
And it becomes a trap as well, because Wendy's spoken in the past very movingly about her mental health and how this legal action hanging over her and this sense of not trusting herself, because she didn't understand where this £36,000 deficit had come from. And I've spoken to many sub-postmasters about this. They start to doubt their own minds, because the post office said, well, there's nothing wrong with our IT system. You need to look at yourself.
Well, you're told by an authority that
absolutely,
you're wrong.
and it becomes a spiral of doubting your own sanity, doubting your own mind, doubting your own capability. And that then becomes really pernicious when you become trapped inside your own mental health.
Just on the tour, the reaction you've had when you're talking to people, it's quite remarkable, isn't it, when they're just like, how can I help?
Absolutely.
You know?
I mean, I was in the back room of a pub in Liverpool a couple of years ago, because I only started doing these talks because I couldn't get distribution on the book, because it was a tiny little publisher, and I thought, well, all right, I'll take the story into as many communities as I can. And I was talking in the back room of a pub 2 years ago in Liverpool. There were about 30 people in there, with the sub-postmaster on stage. 3 sub-postmasters from the area had come to listen, and I didn't realise this. They were in the audience. And at the end of it, this woman just was so outraged. She said, what can we do? How can we help? And I wasn't prepared for the question at all, because I just thought, well, I'll tell the story and off I go. And the sub-postmaster in the audience just said, tell as many people as you can. And that's why these evenings can be quite cathartic for the sub-postmasters on stage, but also to be believed, to have a receptive audience, to listen, because they spent so many years shut away from their communities and not having that opportunity.
And isolated, not knowing that anyone else was going
so
through it.
I don't want to say on the poster, this is an evening that will leave you quivering with rage, but sometimes that's the feeling in the room, where people become so outraged by what happened to so many people around the country.
Nick, thank you very much. Good luck with the tour.
Thank you.
Wendy, pleasure to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
And good luck.
Thank you.